Elizabeth de Stadler. Say it with
Yes.
me. Elizabeth de Stadler is happening today. How to be a lawyer and not have everyone hate you. This is what we're going to be talking about today. And this is the last LinkedIn live event of the summer. I'm pausing over August, so it seems only right to go out with an absolute bang with a superstar of a guest. So, self-proclaimed global head of morale
Yes.
is his title. So please tell everybody about you, Elizabeth. For those of you, those of you who don't know who you are, go for it.
I call myself a rehabilitated lawyer. I come from a very conventional background. I also had my first career in corporate law. I was an insurance lawyer. So I think at least half of the jokes out there about lawyers are actually about insurance lawyers. And then I stumbled across this piece of legislation that said in South Africa that all consumer-facing documents need to be in plain language. And that kind of started off my career as an alternative lawyer. And now what I do is I train lawyers in all kinds of human skills, whether it is writing or listening skills or authenticity or how to be more creative. We do workshops and talks and things. But yeah, basically I'm trying to teach lawyers, this is my mission in life, to be more human and also happier, because I think those two things coincide. Yeah.
Absolutely. We did actually meet at one of those events. We met at Legal Geek last year in London, and you got us to do something very strange in the workshop with bananas. Oh, that's as much as I can remember about that one. It was a good one.
Yeah, it was. I completely forgot that we met. It was about bananas because we were listening to the Gwen Stefani song before when we were preparing Anna. Yeah. You do like that.
Yeah, and that was the highlight, to be fair, of that event. I loved it.
Oh, wow,
I loved it. It was great. Hello, Jono. Hello, Stanley. Thank you for saying hi. Everybody here, please drop in the comments and let us know you are here. We love to answer your questions, so we'll either answer them as we go along if it's relevant and I can get some space, or we'll answer them at the end. Oh, Sarah said new glasses.
Yes, so, new glasses.
Okay.
They are.
Okay. Thank you
well
for your
spotted,
comments,
Sarah.
Very well done. So before we get into it, I'm going to tell you something, right? Because these events always get a big audience. So why the hell not? Last one of the summer, so we're going to go. So if you're watching or listening to this, because you might be listening and, trying to surreptitiously listen if you're supposed to be working, which I love, and you already know that your website is really not doing your business anything good, you're not getting enough clients to your website, and you're thinking, do you know what? I put this up 5 years ago and I haven't even looked at it since, then listen more carefully, okay? Because your website is the place that people go to when they want to find out answers to their questions. So you have the answers, right? And if your website isn't giving them the answers, then they're not going to stick around on your website. You're leaving money on the table, as I've put on my beautiful sales page. So perfect time for a refresh. Everyone and their dogs off to the beach for the summer. So, why not let me have a look at your website? I will look at it with fresh eyes. I will tell you through your client's eyes what's good, what's bad, and what you need to improve. So that's when you get a bespoke video review of your website, 5 spaces, okay? That's all we've got, 5 spaces. So you need to drop in the chat, me, if you want one of those, and then I will send you the details. So back to the show. How to be a lawyer and not have everyone hate you. So Jono in his comment is spot on. He's saying train lawyers in human skills. What a controversial topic.
Yeah. Isn't it? Or it's an oxymoron.
Yeah, I know it is, right? It is. And I know it's something else that you do is you create legal documents that people actually want to read, right? So I guess that ties in, doesn't it, with what you do?
Yeah, I think so. Where the title came from is a while ago, I took it upon myself to do a study of 1,000, and I found 1,000 lawyer jokes, because I was interested in figuring out why it is that we're the butt of so many, and some of them quite mean-spirited jokes. There are many, many jokes even that imply that lawyers should die, So it's actually, when you read 1,000 of them, it's quite depressing.
Yeah.
And quite a lot of them hinge. And once upon a time, I did a whole taxonomy of all of the different types of jokes. But one of the biggest ones is that we people don't trust us, which is really because we are supposed to be trusted advisors, right? People entrust us with some of their biggest problems, things that have enormous impact on their lives. And then I started thinking about why it is that people don't trust us. And I often think it's because we tend to, obfuscate. We tend to use really complicated language. We tend to make things look incredibly complex. And that's kind of how these two concepts for me tie in, because the research has shown time and time again that your ability to communicate well is what makes people trust you. So I went from lawyer jokes to teaching lawyers how to be more human.
Yeah, because it almost seems like and it seems purposeful sometimes, that kind of barrier, using the really complex language to be like, right, well, I'm really clever and you're not. So, I'm going to.
Yeah. I think there is a little bit of posturing, but I also think a lot of it is not as deliberate as we might think. I always say, legalese is hereditary. So when I started my training contract, on the very first day, my boss asked me the partner who's my principal, asked me to write a letter to a lawyer saying, we received the documents that you sent us. We will look at them and get back to you as soon as possible, which is, of course, exactly what I wrote down after I had an almighty giggle at the fact that we have to write a letter, which is then attached to an email. Like, why not just write an email? And we went through 16 drafts of that letter and ended up with something like, we referred to your letter dated 25 January 2008. Actually, it was 2006. Now people can work out how old I am. We referred to your letter dated 26 January 2006. We will consider the documentation you sent us, take instructions from our clients, and revert to you as soon as possible. That's not even good English.
No, really not.
And it would never have occurred to me to write like that. But through the training that I received, and this lawyers really want to create their sort of juniors in their image, right? You learn to write like that. It's learned. It's not natural at all. And you kind of think, well, everybody writes like this, so this must be how I am meant to write. And so it's quite a big shift for lawyers to get out of the dear sirs kind of mode of writing.
Yeah. Yes, I'm interested to hear how you do that. Obviously, I don't want to know your entire process. That might take a while. But what do you have to do? Teach them English all over again? How does it work?
Normally, the English is quite good. Most lawyers are fairly good writers. I think the biggest shift is to shift from a lawyer-centric approach, right? You're always thinking that you're writing for either yourself or for other lawyers, to thinking really about your audience. So we use the design thinking method, which is also sometimes now called legal design, which irritates me because it's just design thinking, which puts the user of the communication first. So we really spend a lot of time thinking about who are we writing for, and it's different every time. And what might their needs be? Like what is it that they want to get from this document? And then you put that front and center, and the kinds of things that lawyers are concerned about, like mitigating risk, becomes secondary. It's not that it's not important, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is to communicate your message to that specific audience. So that I would say is the biggest sort of mind shift that lawyers have to make, is from being kind of self-centered when they write to being user or client-centric when they create communication. Yeah,
absolutely. And I come across this every single day. And you're right. Lawyers are great writers, but not so much at copywriting, right? So not as much as talking to their clients. I literally every day I speak to lawyers and they go, well, what should I be writing articles about? Well, firstly, you shouldn't be doing it. Okay, because that's not a good use of your time.
not without some training, right? I always laugh when I see these case notes. Sure, it's interesting to me to read what the case was about, but your clients don't really care what the case was about. All they care about is what to do. Like, what must they do differently? And if the answer is nothing, then shut up.
I love that.
The other thing is train people to ignore us, right? If you keep on writing things that don't tell people what they must do, they're going to learn to ignore you and just scroll past your post, or not open your newsletter, or sign your contract without reading it.
Yeah, very good. And Tanisha's come in. Thank you, Tanisha. She totally identifies with this. So we are taught that this is the way, the right and only way. So that needs to stop, doesn't it? So talking about being human, being authentic, I really like that word, but we'll go with it anyway, and finding your personal voice. I know that this can be really tough for some lawyers, putting themselves out there. So what's been your experience of that, Elizabeth?
I'll start with a quote from possibly my favorite person on earth. And I can see from the comments there's at least one person that shares my affinity for her. And that's Dolly Parton, the country singer.
Okay.
I love Dolly for reasons that we can probably fill a whole webinar just talking about Dolly. But she has the saying, find out who you are and do it on purpose. So that's kind of my definition for authenticity. One of the things, and I've started writing a book, and the first line of the book is, on my first day at the firm, I felt like I was dressed in drag. And one of the things I think that is very harmful in law is that there is really only a single story. I was reminded of it again this past week because there was an article in The Guardian talking about big commercial law firms and all of the billable hours that we must bill and how unhappy lawyers are. And so it's this whole sort of Suits, yes, the TV series, but also the garment. There's this image of lawyers, and a lot of us kind of play at being a lawyer, but it's not really who we are. And that's really bad for you. So the first step for me is to always be mindful of when I'm creating this sort of idealized version of myself, and then catch myself and think, okay, actually, like how do I feel like being, or how can I closely match my outside to my inside in this moment? And I do the same thing when I write. Right. So when I'm finding that I'm writing when I'm writing for myself, because just like you, I often write for other people. So I have to be a bit of a chameleon. But when I'm writing for myself, I'm also constantly looking out for, am I writing in an idealized fashion? Am I writing the way I think I'm supposed to write instead of just writing as me? I don't know if that makes sense. I hope so.
Yeah, no, it does, because I think there's lots of different versions of ourselves, right? And it is, I quite like that about catching yourself in the moment, thinking, no, okay, this is not actually who I am, so let's go back to it.
Yeah, on that first day wearing mascara, I don't wear mascara. My mother had to show me how to do it in the moments before I leave my flat. I have a photo of that day as well.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And we've had a lovely relevant quote. Diamonds in a rhinestone world. Love it. And I also love Dolly as well.
There we go, Dolly.
Yeah. I've not actually heard that quote before, and I really like it. It's a good one.
Yeah. I know Amber is a massive Dolly fan as well.
Yeah, I've been looking for some kind of quote to have in my office, so that could be the one. Might be the winner. We'll see. So you've mentioned your book previously to coming live. I was like, should we talk about your book? And you made a bit of a face. It's not good.
I'm at all times writing a book.
Okay, so
previously it used to be. My previous books were all subject books. So I wrote a book about consumer protection, and then I wrote a book about data privacy. As you can tell, I kind of shed my skin every couple of years, and then I reinvent my career. This one is a little bit more personal. So I suffer from a smorgasbord of mental health issues, and I thought I wanted to write something about how mental health issues can be navigated in the professional setting, because you often find advice is written for your personal life, but not so much how to navigate these things in your professional life. So it's quite near and dear to my heart, this piece of writing. Whether it will end up as a book or a series of articles, we will see. It depends on how quickly I give up.
They say, great, you've got this.
It's finished. It's abandoned.
Thank you, Liesl. You'll have to bedazzle that quote she suggested, and I think that's a wonderful idea. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Talking about, dropping the legalese, making everything a little bit more simple. I know one of the things that you love to do is inject humour into law, because you do have a personality and you like to show it, which is great. So can you give us some examples about how you've done that, or how you teach people to do that? So
there's actually an article coming out next week on a platform by an organization called Contract Nerds, where I wrote quite a bit about it. I'll be posting it. So if you're not following me already, follow me and then you'll see it. But for us, we call it levity. So So what we're talking about, and that has risen to sort of a technical term in my vocabulary. When we say injecting humor into contracts or into legal writing, we don't necessarily mean sort of slapstick, laugh on the roll on the floor, laughing kind of humor, although sometimes we do achieve that. It's mostly just making people smile. Right. And so the interesting thing is, if you know a little bit about cognitive science or behavioral economics, is when you make people smile, their ability to process difficult information goes up. And that has to do with neurochemistry. So even when they don't feel like smiling, if they smile, if those facial muscles start moving, your brain releases all kinds of wonderful hormones, happy hormones, and you can understand difficult things much easier. So an example, we did a returns policy for a big bank over in your country, and they told us that we absolutely can't be funny because it's a very serious bank. And when we wrote the section on claims, how we would, or the section on what to do if something goes wrong, we used a fan for an icon.
Okay.
So like a fan.
Yeah.
And, it got past the lawyers, so they didn't make us take it out. But it's amusing, right? So that connotation when the shit hits the fan, for those of you who are not getting it, when the shit hits the fan, when something goes wrong. So that's an example of you just want a little twinkle in the eye or a little bit of a surprise, and it helps people make it through your document. And if you do it in the beginning, they will go and look for other examples of levity. There is a fantastic resource called the World Commerce and Contracting Contract Design Pattern Library. And you can just Google it and you'll find it. One of the contract patterns we contributed is levity, and there are a lot of examples there. But you're seeing it more and more. Funny terms and conditions. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I really enjoy funny microcopy. So just where you're not expecting to see something funny, like,
yes,
terms and conditions or privacy policy, and I went with something like that, and you get a little bit of humor, and you think, oh, that person's really thought about that. And it's, I very much enjoy that too.
Also, and I can't stress this enough, why we do it is it's fun to do, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
Half of the things I do to up my own enjoyment of my job, not so much because of the utility, although luckily those two things often align.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I just want to go back to your comment just at the beginning of that conversation, which was a roll on the floor laughing. Anybody know where that was gone? That acronym has disappeared, hasn't it? We've kept the lol, but the ruffle, that's just gone, isn't it? Nobody's using that anymore. I wonder why. I think we should bring it back.
Yeah, I think so too. We can definitely bring it back.
Yeah. John has just commented, even if you only get a twinkle in your eye when writing, it's worth it. Yes,
exactly. Absolutely. Focus on your own twinkle.
Yes,
that sounded better in my head, actually.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Okay. We'll just skip straight over that. I've done a couple of podcasts now about mental illness and wellness at work, but I'd be really interested to hear from your point of view, because I know that this is your mission for the year, to get people normalizing and talking about mental health. So you've alluded to it a little bit. So what kind of steps are you taking to do that?
Well, first off, I try and be sort of brutally honest about my own mental health struggles. So earlier in the year, I suffered from burnout. And when I burn out, the saying, when I go down in flames. So, and I have to say, for many, many years, I couldn't understand why it is that every couple of years I suffer from burnout. And I kind of felt really bad about it, because why don't I learn my lesson, right? Like, I'm an A-type personality, so I constantly want to improve. I want to get better at burnout. And this year was a bit different because I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And to be honest, once I got over the initial as I say, I was in remission and my medication kicked in, the overwhelming emotion that I was feeling about it was relief, because all of a sudden I understood why my brain behaves in a certain way and why it is very difficult for me to avoid burnout, and that I have to put additional measures in place. So now, to bring that back to our industry, lawyers suffer from some of the highest levels as a vocation, if I can put it like that, from mental health issues, from depression to addiction issues. Up to 28% of lawyers admit to having a drinking problem, for instance, which to me seems like en masse self-medication. And I think part of the reason is just because people don't talk about it. People still think that, going through therapy is something that you have to keep a secret, or the fact that you drink a handful of pills to put yourself together in the morning, or the fact that you suffer from, whether it's depression or bipolar or anxiety, that it's something that we don't talk about. And so there's a whole lot of wisdom that goes to waste, but also there's a whole lot of understanding that goes to waste. So as I said, I'm feeling relieved because I have this diagnosis, because all of a sudden I have a new level of understanding of how I operate. And so I can do things in order to make sure that I don't go through these sort of dramatic meltdowns. And I think a lot of people don't take that step out of fear, probably, and fear of stigmatization. They don't take the step of finding out what it is that makes their brain different to other people's brains. And there's no shame in that. It's just, I'm neurospicy.
Neurospicy. Nice. Yeah. And I definitely acknowledge that, and knowledge is power. So I think, the longer you're in the dark about that is more scary than actually confronting it head on and going, right, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. These are the steps I can take. This is going to make life, look better for me. This is what I need to do. So, and I think as a society, we've got a whole lot better talking about it, but definitely in the legal industry, there's still a lot of work to be done, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what else was I going to talk to you about, Elizabeth? You definitely don't want to talk too much about your book, do you? I can tell.
It feels a bit early.
As
a good colleague of mine pointed out the other day, I'm in the shoveling sand, part of the writing process. That's draft one, where you shovel sand so one day you can build sand castles. The book is provisionally called Less Wrong Than Before. And maybe that's an interesting little anecdote, because I do think perfectionism is one of the reasons why lawyers suffer disproportionately from mental health issues. I think perfectionism is such a dangerous thing, to have in a professional area. And one of my favorite people of all time, apart from Dolly Parton, is Daniel Kahneman. He won the Nobel Prize for economics, I think in 1997 already. He wrote a book, Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a very difficult book. Everybody always pretends that they've read it.
Right, okay.
It's one of those books. And then when you try to read it, it is quite a difficult book to read. If you are interested in those sort of behavioral economics kind of principles, Nudge is the easier version of Thinking Fast and Slow. Okay. I'm not saying the book is not worth a read. Because he's one of my favorite people, I have read it. But I won't lie, it's not. If you don't find it easy, don't beat up on yourself. But anyway, Adam Grant was doing an interview with Daniel Kahneman, and he asked him why it is that every time someone proves him wrong, he looks like he's having a lot of fun, right? So every time someone proves him wrong, Daniel Kahneman looks like he's having fun. And he responded by saying, well, in that moment when someone proves me wrong, I am less wrong than before. So that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I want to say to people who suffer from perfectionism is just remember that highly successful people are not successful because they get things right the first time. They're successful because they experiment more than other people. So if a person tries 10 times to do something and gives up, a very successful person like your Einsteins and your Elon Musks and your Steve Jobs of the world probably tried 10,000 times. That, I believe, comes from Malcolm Gladwell. This is basically like turning into a book club now.
It is. I know. And I feel like that book, Tanisha's actually mentioned it. Bought the book, could not get through it, she said.
It's very small print as well. Very small print, very close to 20 pages. Like it just feels, sorry, Danny.
Is it one of those? Because I think there's an app you can get now where we can get like a summary of the book. Basically, you don't have to read it. Just summarize.
There's a wonderful app called Big Ideas, and they do the 10-minute version of books. Yeah. No, I'm sure
Yeah,
you can
maybe
find many
so.
summaries.
Yeah,
Nudge is
exactly.
fabulous. Nudge is
Yeah.
a great book to read.
Okay.
Much
Just
easier.
going to have a little look through these comments because they're flying in now. Jono bought the book, about to attempt it, but I'm more reticent now. Okay.
Please
So,
don't leave. Just pace yourself.
pace
Don't
yourself. Jono, you've got this. I
don't
believe in
hurt
you.
yourself.
You've got this. Yes. Tyler says mostly mathematics, and only halfway through does it run into the psychology. But yes, it's absolutely lovely. Next time I need to go in with sticky notes. Good advice. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The second part, like, don't lose hope. The second half indeed is for me the interesting part of the book.
Right. Okay. And we have had a little joke that's come through. You're going to love this, Elizabeth. I don't know who's mentioned it because it says LinkedIn user. Why did the lawyer become a legal designer? Because he wanted to make his briefs more appealing.
I like it. It's somehow slightly filthy.
I know. Yeah, it is. Which is what the best jokes always are. Yeah, please tell us who you are because that's a good one. We don't stay anonymous. We want to hear who you are.
Add it to my collection because it feels new. Like legal design, it feels new.
Yeah, it does, right? And then we've got a flurry of encouragement for Jono to crack on with it. So yeah, just get it done. We'd like to hear from you, please, an update on what's going on. Just before we wrap up, I suppose we really should talk about how to be a lawyer and not have everyone hate you, which is the title of our discussion today. So yes. I know we've spoken about becoming more human and making things simpler and that kind of thing. Not have everybody hate you, not to be the butt of those jokes. Do you have any top tips?
Right. So first off, we often get called the Department of No, because our first reaction is always, or response to something is always, don't do it. Right. So just become aware of the fact that just because lawyers are trained to experience the world as a very scary place. But one of the key aspects of risk management, which is basically what we do, is not only to look at the risk, but also look at the opportunities of doing something, right? So always ask yourself, okay, what is the risk of not doing this thing as opposed to the risk of being 100% compliant with the law? Because it's actually impossible to have a risk-free world. So that's the one thing I think that's really important. The second one is cut to the chase, right? So your clients don't care about very brilliant, undoubtedly legal argument behind your answer. First and foremost, they care about your answer. And so be really focused on your clients' needs. There are so many jokes doing the rounds at the moment about, how in-house lawyers work versus external counsel, or out-house lawyers, as I call them. and it's always got to do with brevity, right? The external counsel will give you a 5-page opinion, whereas the in-house counsel will go for it. Do it or don't, right? And it's absolutely possible for external counsel to also be like that, or to at least layer your information, like have your answer front and center. If you do feel the need, or if you do think that the in-house lawyers might benefit from understanding your arguments, put it in a different layer so that they can access it, but don't hide the answer in there. And then plain language, please, right? There is nothing that will demonstrate to your client that you know your discipline as much as writing in plain language. Even when you're writing for judges, Joseph Kimball's research shows time and time again that the plainer the argument, the more likely it is to succeed, because judges are also humans, right? So don't use convoluted language. Really think about, if you had to explain this to a 2-year-old, how would you do that? Because if you can't explain it to a 2-year-old, it probably means you don't understand it yourself yet. Yeah. So that's why I always say writing in plain language is the ultimate sign of sophistication.
Yeah.
So those are my 3 things.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Yeah, I like those a lot. David has commented and said, someone told me once to start with yes, if, rather than no.
Yeah, or yes and instead of yes but. Yeah, yes and, because it takes the conversation forward, and it also makes the person you're speaking to feel like you've seen them and you've seen their argument, whereas otherwise you just turn it into a fight, a scrap, and it should be a collaboration. Yeah, let's find the best way of doing this thing that you clearly need to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, okay. So guys, I'd love
it. Don't be lame. Like, that's where the humor comes in. Don't be lame. That's why they don't invite us to meetings. Try and be a bit more personable and less of a suit.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And then, yeah, you might get invited to parties as well. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It might be a
meetings
bit
and parties. Maybe, yeah, okay. Please drop in the comments, guys. I'd love to know what your key takeaways have been from this lovely discussion with Elizabeth today. So tell me, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, if they're thinking, do you know what? I'm that lawyer that everyone hates, and I really need to make myself more human. How can they get in touch with you? What's the best way to reach you?
The easiest way is just to drop me a direct message on LinkedIn, and we can set up a coffee, and I give a very good pep talk. So if anybody feels a little bit deflated or dejected after hearing that, we should not write, I received your letter of the 25th of January, I give a very good pep talk.
Brilliant. Okay, so LinkedIn DMs, perfect. We will put in the show notes when my podcast goes live next week, your website, so people can get in touch with you. And it is littered with goats, which is absolutely delightful. Because goats are the best, aren't they? They really are. They really are.
They're the emotional support animals to racehorses, which is why we chose it as our logo. We want to be the emotional support animals to lawyers.
Oh, I never knew that. That is awesome.
Yeah, they calm down racehorses.
Gosh, I've learned that today. That's incredible.
Also, they make really funny noises. That's the other reason, of course.
They do. And they're just really naughty, aren't they? Just really mischievous. They just eat anything. I sometimes wonder if my Labrador was a goat in a previous life, because she will also eat anything, including paper bags and stuff like that. So, but yeah, you can't trust any animals, anything around goats. Yeah, we got some encouragement there from Sarah. Goats are awesome. Our favourite phrase this week, Amber, littered with goats. Yeah, it is littered with goats. Check it out. So, as I said, we're having a break. So August is going to be no more LinkedIn Lives. However, we are going to be replaying some of our favourites / some of the best received. Not necessarily the same thing. So we will be doing some pre-recorded ones, and then we'll be back after summer. So thank you, Elizabeth. Today has been an absolute treat, which I knew that it would be, to be honest. I did know this.
Thank you for me as well.
I was fully prepared. Comments are still flying in. I'm trying to wrap up, guys. Come on. Usain Bolt as the goat is a bit of an oxymoron then, says Jono. Okay.
Greatest of all time.
Yeah, greatest of all
That's
time.
the other reason why I'm obsessed with goats.
Yeah, I know.
But I can say, Usain is the racehorse.
Yeah, very true. Okay.
Very Olympic.
So, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for all your comments. We've cheered people up today, apparently. So then I think our work here is done, right?
There we go.
Work here is done. Yeah,
mic drop.
Yeah, absolutely. So have a wonderful rest of your day. And yeah, we're going to leave this here. It's just been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.